Well, I have 2 o'clock Second Life time, so I'd like to get this panel for the Virtual World's Best Practices in Education 2014 panel started. I'd like to thank you all for coming. Today, we have the Virtual World's Education Roundtable, a Best Practices Influence. I am your moderator, Stephen Zootfly, Stephen Gager in Second Life. And I'm going to give some introductions on the speakers, and then we will get to the questions that were prepared ahead of time with time for questions from the audience. The Virtual World's Education Roundtable is a featured panel of educators who get together weekly to discuss Virtual Worlds as a teaching tool. This purpose of the panel is to discuss the trends that the VWER has seen over the course of its existence, and to what extent it may have influenced and advanced best practices in the use of virtual worlds for education. The connections established by the group have bonded a band of educators that share ideas weekly, and it is the persistent popularity of these meetings that make it such a noteworthy group in Second Life. And again, I think very worthy of being a panel discussion at VWBPE. Your panelists include Evelyn McElhinney, who is Callie Pizzaro in Second Life. She is a nurse lecturer in the Department of Nursing and Health in Glasgow Caledonian School of Health and Life Sciences. And we also have Shailey Minocha, who is Shailey Garfield in Second Life. And let my Speak Easy HUD get caught up to my voice. There we go. She is an associate professor in computing at the Open University in the United Kingdom. And she's been involved in a number of projects that have used Second Life in teaching and learning for health professionals, and in working in distributed environments. And as a institution, and she can only stay with us for the first hour, is Beth O'Connell, who is Beth Ghostraven in Second Life. She is a teacher librarian with 18 years of experience, and she's been in Second Life for the past year or two, working with the Virginia Society for Technology and Education, and is a recent member of the VWER Executive Committee. She, you might have heard her in local chat or other notices sent out. So these are the 5 questions the panel will be addressing today. And I have a slide board to the right of the panelists that will go through the questions. What I do ask is that if you have any questions you'd like for the panelists to address, please IM me, and I will pass them on at the end of that section. But if you have a clarification or a question, please put that in local chat so that the moderators can address anything that might be confusing for them. So yeah, let's have another round of applause for the moderators. And again, I'm probably going to go out of your local chat range. And let me start off with just saying the first question. And they'll be going in order of Callie, and then Bailey, and then Beth. And the first question is, what have been some of the most interesting, thought-provoking, or controversial topics that have been discussed in the roundtable meetings? And that's to you, Callie.
Okay, thanks. Just before we start, Stephen, can I just say that it's great to see so many of the VWER community here, and that we really would be nothing without them. And I know that sounds a bit corny, but it's very true. And I'd like to mention Grizzla, Beth, who's on the panel here, Sheila Yoshikawa, who can't be here, and many, many others really who have helped us, and Zoe as well, who've helped us throughout the years in moderating and so on and running the events. So a big shout out to them and all of our new members. So thanks for allowing me to do that. So to kind of address the first question, I kind of started thinking, right, well, let me look at some of these, let me look at some of the kind of transcripts that we had. But actually one of the things that comes to my mind is this kind of recent, a recent transcript that we had. We had a meeting about research in virtual worlds, where a fair few folk who had carried out research in virtual worlds attended, including Tom, as you know, who's the kind of guru of virtual world research. I'm not sure if he's here, so hi if you are. And that turned out to be a really interesting discussion, and not just for those of us who are kind of undertaking research or have wrote any papers about it, etc. But I think it was really interesting for the others who attended. It was a great transcript as well for folks who are thinking about research in virtual worlds, and certainly I get frequent requests from students thinking about how to do it, and it's not just as simple as popping in here and popping out, as many folk know. So that ended up as a really great one. Controversy, I think we need to give to Iggy as being the main man for any controversy with VWER. He seems to always have a quite spicy kind of meeting. But they're always great as well. And I also love the international seminars that we do once a month. So that's kind of my thoughts. So I'll hand it over to the other panelists.
Thanks, Cully. I think I had the same session in mind as well about conducting research in virtual worlds, which we had recently and which Cully mentioned. I think it brought in a very rich discussion on the methods that we can use for conducting research in virtual worlds. We shared a number of URLs and we discussed methods as wide-ranging from ethnography to conducting interviews in virtual worlds. We discussed about the ethical issues, and it was a very rich discussion in terms of the people who are new to virtual worlds, the colleagues who are new to virtual worlds. They were asking about how to develop a researcher profile, and the ones who have been conducting research in virtual worlds for many years, they were being asked those questions. So I think that rich discussion that happened in terms of the methods, the ethics, how to develop a researcher identity, and to share those URLs and resources, it was a very, very effective discussion. But we've also had discussions on STEM education in 3D virtual environments. There was one open forum that we had on STEM education, and recently they presented their work on 3D virtual environments, and a part of that was related on STEM. I myself presented our 3D virtual geology field trip in this virtual worlds educational roundtable session. One of the other sessions that was extremely interesting was where 4 authors came together. They had written a book, Ethnography and Virtual Worlds, a Handbook of Methods. And so there was a panel in which all these 4 authors came, and they discussed not only about the book that they have written about how to conduct research in virtual worlds, but what was also very useful here was the process of how they brought working from different locations. How did they bring the materials of the book together to develop this book? And I think that process and the product both coming together within these panel discussions have been very useful resources for us. But we've come up to, when we have these open forums in our virtual worlds educational roundtable, we also discuss issues such as the educational discounts by Linden Labs, why they were taken away, why they have been reinstated, what kind of discounts we should be getting, why Linden Labs is not engaging with us as educators. So we do very freely discuss about these controversial issues. And because this Virtual Worlds Educational Roundtable has been around since 2008, and some of us have been coming since 2008, I think it has developed into such a useful community where we can openly discuss about whatever we feel are the current issues, and whether it's obstacles or whether it is whether there are some advantages of working within Second Life. We feel very open to talk about those issues and come up with these solutions. So I'll pass now on to Beth if she has any views.
I have to say first how awed I am to be sitting in this auditorium speaking to you all. There are so many people here and so many people that I know. I was here yesterday listening to Philip Linden talk right in this spot, Philip Rosedale. So anyway, um, I think the most interesting session we've had at VWER that I've been interested in, thank you, Edith, was Mark Child's interview on avatar immersion. I'm really interested in this because I think part of the value of using virtual worlds for education is the feeling of immersion, the feeling of being there. And it's really interesting to look at the pieces of that. What is it that makes us feel immersed? And we talked about clothing. I love fashion in Second Life. I love to shop. But it's interesting to see how that can contribute to learning. And also architecture, our surroundings, the way we decorate things, the way we set this auditorium up, for instance, the way we have campfires in Second Life. That kind of thing is really interesting. We have had some controversial discussions. I won't say they're heated. I mean, people don't get angry at each other, I don't think. It's pretty peaceful. But there have been lots of different viewpoints on things. We've been talking lately about the Oculus Rift and different interfaces to use with Second Life, and we've been talking about other virtual worlds. Callie, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Beth. I'm probably okay with the first question if you're. And Stephen, it's up to you.
Yeah, I haven't received any questions in IM, so I'll open it up to the panel. What we'll do for this first round of questions is we'll let each panelist answer one follow-up question, and then move on to the next question. And then at the end of the fifth question, we'll have another round of questions from the audience. So again, if you are farther than 20 meters away from me, the panel, which is probably most of you, please shout on a PC, hold down the control key when you hit enter. And I'll say the offer is going. Gone. I have one. I have a question here from Merlin Dusk, which is, what is your opinion on physics simulations in Second Life? And again, I presume that's in the context of an educational type of physics simulation. So whoever would like to take that one first, maybe Callie?
Well, I actually think that Shailey would probably be more appropriate for this. She's probably got a bit more experience of physics stuff. What I have seen, the only thing I will say is what I have seen, yeah, it looks really good. I think it depends on what you want to do. You know, is it about the actual experiment or whatever, because physics is not my thing, so I'm going to babble here a little, or is it about the way the students interact in a team? You know, it depends on what your actual purpose, I suppose, is. So I don't know, Sheila, you might be able to add, because I think you might have seen a wee bit more of that kind of learning environment than me, if you want to take that on.
Stephen, did you mean the physics as a discipline, or you meant the physics of developing the environments here?
Yeah, good point, Shailey.
The question, I'll put the question in verbatim into local chat, because I think it was, again, physics simulations in Second Life. And I think if Merlin would like to clarify if he meant teachers building physics simulations or using them as a learning tool or using them as an exploratory tool, if you'd like to clarify, then I'll post that out there. So his follow-up is, like the Sagan Planetarium that has a tour of the solar system. I guess, do you feel like those are a very effective way of teaching physics, and as more of a museum type of tour, maybe it's a substitute for a real-life museum tour?
Actually, Stephen, I don't have a direct experience with physics simulations, but the ones that I have directly worked with are to do with geology, and which I'll be presenting in a lecture just after this panel. And I think what this environment or any 3D environment does is to bring together both the realistic and the non-realistic elements so that you can bring in things that you can't do in real life. So for example, we have the Abyss Observatory in Second Life. Now there you can study underwater marine life by going right to the ocean floor. Now, the real life, if you were doing marine studies in real life, you wouldn't be able to go down to the ocean floor to study about it. But here you can do that. So I think sometimes it breaks the laws of physics and gravity that you can go right to the ocean to study about such kind of subjects or such kind of organisms. Similarly, with geology, the one that I'll be speaking about later on, you can fly within these environments. You can have cross sections of the mountains, which you wouldn't be able to do in real life. But for learning and engagement, for students learning and engagement, these kinds of simulations can be very interesting because you familiarize yourself much more with the environment. As in the case of geology, if you were doing a field trip, you get an aerial view of the environment, which you wouldn't be able to get in real life. Similarly, cross-section of a mountain, if you see what are the various kinds of rocks within a mountain, you wouldn't be able to do that in real life. But in a simulation here, you can have a cross-section of the mountain. So I think similarly, if you go to the Genome Island, which is one of the genetics islands that we have in Second Life, here you can move within a 3D cell. Now, if you a 3D cell, if you're studying about an animal or a plant cell, and you want to know the structure of a cell, it has a nucleus, it has a mitochondria, you can move within this cell in this 3D simulation of a cell on this Genome Island, and you can click on the various parts of this 3D cell, learn more about it, and the kind of immersion that you get while you're interacting with this, whereas you can't even see a cell in real life. I think this kind of bridging of the realism with the non-realism is what, and the interactivity with these simulation really adds to the learning. And if I go to the Planetarium, which is again in Second Life, the Exploratorium, which we have, in which we have a number of experiments to do with solar system, etc. Again, they might not be the real simulations, but they might not be the real artifacts, but the virtual simulations, whether you can see the distance between the various planets, how the planets move around the sun, and you can sit on that orbit and as the planet. So it is not realistic, but the non-realism adds to the learning experience because it helps you to have that kind of a spatial and a visual learning. So I'm sorry that I'm not able to give you the exact simulations of physics, which I have not seen. Perhaps if Vic is in the audience, he is one of the STEM persons, he might be able to add to it. But I've tried to give you some examples from geology, from genetics, that I have experienced in these environments, and which add to the student learning and engagement because of the link between the realism and the non-realism.
Shailey, I think that was very well said, and I would like to move on to the next question, which is, in what way do you feel the group has helped other educators become more confident in the use of virtual tools?
Okay, well, I'll take that one. And I would say, really like many communities of practice, as defined by kind of Lavie and Wenger, I think we offer a place where people feel that they can share ideas, educational resources, pick up other ideas, find solutions and solve problems, and then document those in their transcripts. And they're, I think, a really great resource for folks that can't come every week but can dip back in and get a look at those transcripts. And of course, to go on field trips as well, really great field trips that we've been on to see what others have done. Although that's only my opinion, so I would love to hear Shailey and Beth's thoughts, but I would also like, if you don't mind, Stephen, to open that to folk in the audience who are part of the community. I would love to hear what they've got to say too after Beth and Shailey have spoken.
Certainly, that works great. So if people want to go ahead and put in local chat comments, we'll address those at the end of Beth's and Shelley's comments.
Stephen, to add to what Kali is saying is that I think with this Virtual Worlds Education Roundtable, we call it a Virtual Worlds Education Roundtable, but actually we talk about all kinds of virtual environments. So we talk about 2D emerging technologies as well as 3D emerging technologies. And recently we discussed about the New Media Consortium's Horizon report. And we, in fact, dedicated one full session to it in which we talked about flipped classroom, we talked about learning analytics, we talked about games and gamification, we talked about virtual assistants, we talked about 3D printing. Now, those kinds of, so what we do as educators in this is we talk about 3D virtual worlds and we talk about all the other emerging technologies. And I think that familiarity that we build within this environment of talking to educators and practitioners, because it's not only educators who come to our roundtable meetings, but we have practitioners as well. I think that combination of educators and practitioners, combination of this Second Life and other virtual worlds with 2D environments, that helps us in real life when we go back to our work practices. It helps us to bring these tools together in meaningful ways so that we can build these blended learning environments, so that we can see how Second Life or 3D virtual worlds can be blended perhaps with wikis or with blogs, etc. The other thing that why we become more confident here is because in real life, not many of our colleagues really understand the significance of virtual worlds in education and training. And I think coming to this panel every week and talking to people of similar beliefs and convictions, I think it reinforces our beliefs and values. And it improves our confidence that we are on the right track and that there is a role of 3D virtual worlds in education and training. Also, we become more confident in that way also, that we become more familiar with not only 3D virtual worlds, but we talk about other virtual worlds as well. We've had presentations, for example, on OpenSim. We've had presentations on Unity 3D. So it opens up the scope for us to bring in other virtual environments as well in our learning and teaching practices. And I don't think that there is any other forum that way which brings these different virtual worlds together, even if the meetings are being held in Second Life. The other way is that we get to know people. Now, here in the audience, I think I know about 75% of the people here, because once one or the others, I would have seen them in the forum that we have every week. And I think that familiarity that we develop, we feel at home immediately when we go to an event, and that further enhances our confidence. And I have used this forum sometimes just to get ideas for research. I have recruited participants for research studies here. And I think that all, it's a place where you can go, you can talk about the issues that you're facing. And generally it is very supportive, and you get ideas, you get tips. You also get locations of where you can take your students. So colleagues share the slurs for bringing in students. Where do you go for induction? Where do you go for language learning? Where do you go for STEM education? So I think these various kinds of resources that come together within this environment makes us confident, makes us feel, I would say, that it makes us feel that we can go and in the real environment and blend them in useful ways in our practices. So I'll pass it on to Beth.
I think what Shailey was saying about VWER being kind of a support group is very true. A lot of times we have educators come to our meetings who are new to Second Life and new to virtual worlds period, and we can help them, help kind of point them in the right direction towards orientations or specific help. We can IM them behind the scenes to help out, and just make them feel welcome. I think that's a big part of what we do. Back to you, Callie.
Thanks, Beth. So, if you're okay, then Stephen, now I would really love to hear what the people that come to VWER think about that question. What do they think? You know, kind of helps them grow in confidence or so on.
That's perfect. I think, again, anybody who's benefited from the VWER or would like to say something about how they've benefited or their institution has benefited, please throw it in local chats. While you're doing that, I do want to pose a question, just a clarification from Edith Halderman. She asked, so are you all in higher ed? Are there K through 12 educators at the meetings too? And I think, again, there is both of those. But Callie or Shailey, do you have a sense of what the breakdown is? I will point out for myself that the meetings are typically Thursdays, at least for the United States, in the afternoon, so that may be biased by the availability of the workday. But can you give us a quick breakdown of what you think that might be?
Well, I've probably been around the longest, so maybe I'll kind of say, I think it probably ebbs and flows. We've changed our time maybe once or twice, so maybe that has changed who turns up. However, I think there's probably a bit more higher ed, but probably more K-12. That sounds a bit of a cop-out of an answer, but probably more K-12 than people think. And that's actually helped me to understand the American education system, if anybody actually does understand it. I'm only kidding. So no, I think there's probably more K-12 there than you think. And we've also had a couple of sessions where we've focused completely, where Edith, once you get to know me, you know that most of the time I'm just having a wee joke. So yeah, so I think we've had a whole session on K-12, but you know, Edith, it probably is time we had another one that focused on K-12, so maybe you should come and help us lead that. You.
Yeah, again, I'll just reiterate Annabella Galicia's comment about the alone in the dark syndrome, that she was commenting that she thinks that helps people feel that, again, they're not alone, and again, it can probably help make the case to other people to get involved as well. I have a question from IM, from Ridvan Researcher, and the question is, do you think that the VWER participation by individual faculty or teachers has prompted any whole institutions via their advocating efforts to, again, buy an island, bring more students, and actually have educational activities in Second Life?
Shailey, can you take that? I was catching up with the chat, sorry. I missed a bit at the start of the question. Or Beth, save my bacon here.
Sure, I can do that, Cully. I think, Stephen, you meant the question was that have these forums helped in have encouraged people to adopt Second Life and other virtual worlds in their education and learning initiatives? Is that right, Stephen?
Yes.
I think so, yes. I think in my case, I would say that when I came in 2008 here, I was very much not very sure of whether Second Life can play a role in education and in learning and teaching, because I felt that it was yet another technology. But being here in these meetings every week and talking to colleagues and hearing about their experiences, and I think the spending time here made me feel that yes, we could apply Second Life, and specifically in a distance education university where I work, where students don't meet face to face. And this was the environment where we could bring in students, especially those students who cannot travel for their face to face tutorials, either because of mobility or family constraints, or students who are working in group projects, but they work in distributed environments and they cannot meet together face to face at a central place. Again, we felt this was a very useful environment to do that. And for holding seminars, especially bringing in experts and experts who wouldn't be able to travel all the way, and they could meet here with our students and to get feedback. So we have run sessions here with our students where people from the colleagues from the community have come and given feedback to our students, whether it was on their projects, whether it was on their other learning activities. So I think all my interactions in this forum led me to adopt Second Life in various initiatives at our university. And in fact, we still have a presence in Second Life. We have a set of islands that we are still using with our research students and for seminars and other activities. And I'm sure there are many other colleagues here who have been influenced by this forum. And I'll give you some other example with regards to funding. When I had to, there was an opportunity for funding, and the trustees were going to come, and I had to present about Second Life and about the significance of virtual worlds in education and learning. And it was at that time that I got through to colleagues who I had met in this forum over a weekend, and I collected resources and prepared my presentation. Had I not had the support from a community such as this, I wouldn't have been able to prepare and get the funding. So I think the association with this panel, with the members of this particular forum, led me to get that funding. So these are my personal examples, but I'm sure that the presence of colleagues here in this forum and listening to experiences may have influenced other colleagues as well.
I think we're good on time, so I'm going to ask if the panel can answer Serene Jewell's question. What kind of support, financial or otherwise, do educators need that they're not getting to succeed in virtual worlds? And I guess as a moderator, add on to that question is there something you think the Virtual Worlds Education Roundtable can do as its own organization to help make that happen?
Well, let me think. I think that, it's a battle that we all have for any type of funding. And often, depending on where you work, this kind of funding of these environments may be seen as a priority or may not. I think collaborating together and showing that these can be international funding opportunities and not just local may increase your chances. Finding somebody, and I'm going to embarrass her probably here, but like Shailey, to be on your team so that there's some sort of track record there may be helpful, even if she doesn't do any work. Yeah. And Serene, maybe even just going for small pots of funding, kind of like the higher, I know that you're from England, so the Higher Education Academy, or, something kind of small pots to just kick off so that you then can build that up, because you've got experience that I'm sure you can draw on. But I think, it just depends on... It really depends on what the priorities are of your local institution. If they don't see it as a priority, then you might find it difficult. So you might, as I say, need to go and widen your net to get pots of funding from maybe not the traditional kind of funding bodies that your university would use. So maybe that's just a kind of thought. From the other point, Stephen, what can VWER do? I don't know. I mean, maybe it would be of an influence if you showed that you were part of this. I'm not quite sure. You again, I'll probably let the audience decide that one. We've talked about some collaborative projects before, and some folk have done that. But whether you would kind of go back and say that that was started because of VWER or just because of the connections that were made there, I'm not quite sure. I've certainly been involved in some projects which were because I'd met people in VWER, so, and I'd created a relationship where I could trust. So, yeah. Oh yeah, so you did, Grizzly. Thank you. All right, so I'll shut up now.
Well,
Stephen, could
I
I
was,
add about the funding part?
yeah, sure.
What I feel is that, Stephen, that funding is still a very, very big challenge. I think there was a phase in 2008 and 2009 when funding came in a bit easier because people were trying to test Second Life and they were trying to find out how effective it is. Even after presenting effective case studies and even after writing up the papers that we've done, I don't think that the community outside has moved to that extent to be fully convinced about the significance of virtual worlds in education. And the 3D virtual geology field trip that we've developed in Unity 3D and which I'll be presenting just after this panel, I think the struggle that I had to get that funding, even when our university had been funded for it, but to get that funding across to developing a 3D environment, it was a very big challenge. And during the process of development also, some said Avatar shouldn't be there. Some said that why do we need voice or why do we need a text chat? Because I was trying to bring in the Second Life experiences within a Unity 3D environment because I knew that those interactions would be useful there. So the kind of resistance that people have towards avatar-based interaction, or they have towards, or the perceptions that they have towards virtual worlds, that this is just a gaming environment, or it is an environment which is not really for educational purposes, I don't think that we have been able to overcome the barriers even after working very hard for the last 5-6 years within these 3D virtual worlds. At least I have been here since 2008, 2009, and I don't think that I have won the battle as yet. It's only when the application that we developed in Unity 3D came forth, it's at that time when they saw how avatars were interacting and how useful those multi-user collaborations were happening. It was only at the end they started believing a bit in 3D environments. But that came too late for me because I had already put in so much of a struggle. And with funding bodies, I think 3D environments, that the problem is that unless people don't experience it for themselves, they don't spend time in this environment, they don't realize how immersive it can be and how the persistent environments can be so useful for learning that you can come back and practice multiple times the same thing, how useful they are for procedural learning. Because people outside, the funders, they have not experienced these environments, or other senior colleagues of ours who are in the policy making positions, they themselves have not experienced it. And that presence, the sense of presence and the sense of immersion, you just don't get by one visit. You really have to spend some time here to get that feeling and to be convinced. Because they haven't spent time in it, they are not yet convinced. So I think this battle will continue, and I am still not convinced that we have been able to influence the outside community. And I think the best way to do is to frequently write up whatever we are doing in the form of case studies, in the form of easily understandable text, or to create small videos and share them with the community, because perhaps the videos can convey to them the significance of these virtual worlds if they don't spend time themselves here, or to give them anecdotes from students or provide them with evidence that this is what the students are experiencing in these environments. So I think it's a very, very tough out there. We have been very fortunate to get funding 2 or 3 times, but I don't think it is that easy, Stephen.
Well, I agree. And I think one thing I want to just say real quick as someone who's been in an education environment, thinking about funding. If you do have any success stories out there about VWER or other groups helping you find funding or helping you bring students successfully in the Second Life, again, please make sure you share that with the community, especially by coming to the VWER Roundtable and trying to find ways to advertise that in your grant writings. Again, I have some other good questions from local chat, but in the interest of time, I think I want to move on to the next question. And I have it in note cards, so if there's time at the end, Agile Bill will come back to it. So question number 3 is, why do you feel the Roundtable has been such a popular discourse among educators for several years? And again, we'll go to Callie, Shailey, and then Beth.
Oh, sorry, put on your talk. It's always good. I think it's about the kind of openness of the community. You know, we really do want everybody and anybody to come along that thinks they have something to share. You know, there is a real altruistic nature, and we do really want to hear all opinions, as long as they're respectful and don't dominate anyone else, because I think we still have to accept that there is an academic debate going on, and that we, you know, still have respect for other people. I also think that we've now got an inner core of people who really do care about each other and are totally up for sharing their expertise, you know, but at the same time, well, not today, and also they're open from learning from each other, and we're on the same time every week, which probably helps as well, so it saves you having to remember. And I also post out to Facebook and Twitter and wherever, Google Plus, so that helps probably remind people that they have to come along, and I'll find them. But we also have great people in the seminar series that are so generous with time and such interesting subjects, from right across from Pamela Cliff talking about virtual relationships to you know, Dadden last week, or Shailey, or Agile Bill, and John Lester, you know, Pathfinder. We have such a variety of people. We have another great, you know, bunch of folk coming up soon again as well. So I think that kind of variety across the disciplines, you know, we don't just talk about one subject. And in our roundtables, as I say, we do try to, you know, let folk have a voice, if you like. And I'll pass it on. Maybe Beth, I don't know, Shailey, if you don't mind, I'd like to hear what Beth's kind of thoughts are on that, if that's all right.
That's fine, Cully.
I think you're right that the openness has been a key factor. Anybody can come and talk about anything, and you don't have to be an educator. You can be someone who is interested in education. The moderators do a good job of walking that line between letting people talk about what they want to and keeping things focused on education and civility. And that helps people feel comfortable too. And the way we have a core group of people that keeps coming back, that also helps. That's it.
Shailey, would you still like to address the question?
Sure, Stephen. Yes, I think for me the most important part, and I think Cully referred to it as well, is the regularity at which it takes place. It takes place every week at the same time, irrespective of the time zones, whatever they are. When they change with the summer and the winter times, we just go with the Second Life time, and we stick to that time and we go by that time. So I think that regularity, that you know that every Thursday, if you go there, you would find people to have a chat with. I think that is what makes this the discipline that we follow makes this a very, very popular and a very useful place to go to. And I think it's a time that suits UK, Europe, and the US. I think it doesn't suit colleagues in Asia, Asia Pacific, and Australia. But I think it would have been very difficult to get one time that suits everybody. But because we have transcripts, we have a website where we keep a record of the pictures, the transcripts. So I think people who are not able to attend, they can still refer to these transcripts and make the best use of it. And the transcripts are very detailed. We just don't put the transcripts on, and as Beth does, she puts in all the URLs, she revises all the transcripts before they go online, and she puts a lot of work in the background to get these transcripts in a way that are easily understandable by people who were not able to participate on a particular day or in a particular session. I think what makes this a very popular place again is that we have a mix of sessions. So we have open forum one week, we might have an interview the other week, then we might have a panel, we may have a question answer session. So I think this diversity of sessions and the diversity of speakers, both from academia and practice, that makes it a very useful place as well. And there is a dedicated staff that works in the background. With regards to publicity, and they're all volunteers, transcription and advertising this and taking care of the website. And I think that effort that goes in the background makes it very effective. And as I said earlier, our discussions just don't go around 3D environments. We discuss all kinds of emerging technologies. And I think that is why because of its varied and this diverse scope makes it interesting for people with different interests to come. And they don't have to come to every session, but because the sessions are well advertised and well before the date, they can match their interests with that particular session and come along. And as both Beth and Kali touched, the friendly atmosphere. And we have a mix of expertise and colleagues. So we might have people who have worked on a variety of 3D platforms. We have people coming in who have experience with Reaction Grid, with Unity 3D, with OpenSim and Second Life. So I think you get that holistic experience when you come to any discussion here. It is not just Second Life focused. And we talk about the latest developments. So I remember we have sometimes picked up one blog post, and we've talked around that blog post, which might be on a hot topic for discussion. And I think that itself, the latest and up-to-date discussions make it again a very popular forum. And for dissemination, I think we use this forum for dissemination. So if I've written up something or a colleague has written up something, we come and share here. And I think that really helps us because people go and read our work and later on send us comments on it. So it's a forum for dissemination as well. And you don't have to present work in this forum, which is all finished and up to date. I remember presenting work which is very much in progress, and getting feedback from the community early on this work in progress gives you that kind of a confidence in feedback, and that the direction that you're taking is perhaps right. You need to deviate from that direction and maybe incorporate other things. So I think this constant feedback that you get on work in progress again makes it a very encouraging platform to come in and discuss.
Again, if you have any questions, please IM me. There was a comment that came through from, I think, from Orinoki, that in the early days, AJ Brooks provided parcels, which I basically gave people in the group an opportunity to practice resin skills and whatnot. How important do you think giving educators new to Second Life their own space to res and to customize is a really important thing to do and to encourage?
Yeah, I'll kick that off if you don't mind, guys. I think it's really important. I think certainly at the moment, the Virtual World Education Roundtable is at my university island, at Glasgow Caledonian University, Scotland. So if you're listening, boss, did you notice that plug there? Anyway, But that area is cut off. I'm the estate manager of that as well, so I've cut that VWER area off. And if you're within the group, then you can res there. Claudia, our builder, might send your stuff back right enough, because she likes a clean and nice sim. But you know, if you're in the group, we meet every Thursday, but I'm happy for folk to come there and have a play about, res some stuff up, even chat to me about having a little, I could get, and Grizzly, that's a great point. Grizzly's got an open sandbox, and there's a few other sandboxes about, but if they want to do it in the kind of comfort of somewhere they feel familiar with, then certainly, you know, Arnoak, that's open again to anybody in the group. And I have a kind of 2-hole Sims, so, you know, if somebody desperately needed somewhere to come for a short time just to have a wee practice, you know, come and speak to me.
All right, well, let's move on to the next question. What are some of the challenges of running these types of roundtable discussions every week? And I'm just going to emphasize the every week.
Yeah, that's a definite. I'll sorry guys, but I'll kick that off because I'm obviously the lead at the moment, and I have to kind of. I know challenge. It's not a challenge, guys. Like, you're absolutely right. It's a joy. It's a joy. I'm going to put some down though, because although they're challenges, we also always have a solution, girls. Isn't that right? On the tip of our tongues. So firstly, having the time to do the organising of the meetings. I'm kind of doing work full time, and I'm doing a part-time PhD here in Second Life, so it's sometimes I kind of go, oh my god, I've got to do this, whatever, but I do really love it, so that's why I keep doing it. One of the other challenging things about just organising and advertising, etc., of the meetings is trying to find themes and speakers who you think will be of interest to such a diverse audience, you know, because we do, as we've said already, have such a diverse group of people from all different kind of, you know, K-12 right up through higher ed, and then even people returning, you know, more mature students returning. We have students themselves, so it's a kind of real, you know, it is a real kind of mix. So trying to find something that you think is going to, you know, kind of interest folk. Managing the speed of the text when you're actually moderating the sessions is quite a challenge as well, because you really do want to kind of try and ensure that everyone feels they're being heard. So, you know, that can be a challenge, although we have, you know, great folk in the small kind of inner team that often help to handle that. Dealing sometimes with the occasional rude person or random person dropping in and running around crazily, or that might be just us. That can be a little challenge, but we, you know, again, we handle that by just punting people off or whatever. Organising the transcripts as well to ensure speakers feel they're accurate. If we interview people, we tend to try and let them see the transcript first, because either myself or Shailey or Dan, Prof Dan there, who I see in the front row, who's been great at helping us transcribe. But, you know, we try to paraphrase that, and sometimes we don't always get it right, so we like to return that to the speaker to make sure it's accurate. And also there's random chatter at the end, and sometimes we need to take that out, because, you know, the transcript, folk might think it's stopped, and they might say something that probably they don't want in the public domain, so we need to make sure that anything that should be not for the minute is removed. So that's probably my thoughts, but obviously I have a slightly different role from like Beth or Shailey or whatever, and even Grizzly, so it would be good again to hear their thoughts on that one.
Hello, Stephen. I actually, I am not really a part of the organization team. I'm a regular attendee, and I sometimes help in doing the transcripts. That is, when a speaker is speaking, I write in the chat and try to do it very quickly so that I can capture whatever the speaker is saying. But I do sometimes notice how Kali struggles with getting the right kind of speakers, as she said. So she comes to us with ideas, sometimes having the right kind of, sometimes having colleagues to stand in for Kali and other colleagues if colleagues cannot come. I think keeping the website up to date is another challenge, because all the transcripts, etc., go onto the website. So that becomes another challenge. And because it is volunteer run and driven by volunteers, I think all of us put in our own time to do this. And I think that itself is a challenge in itself, because sometimes we can commit to it and sometimes we can't, because of it being a volunteer activity. So I don't think I have more to add on this, Stephen, because I don't really deal with it directly on a day-to-day basis as Kali and Beth do. But I do stand in sometimes. If Kali is looking for a speaker, I do come up with some ideas that perhaps I could do something about it.
I have two big challenges with VWER. The biggest one, of course, is getting the transcripts onto the website. And I thought it would be much less time consuming than it has been. I regret to say I'm really far behind on getting some of those transcripts up, but I am still working on it. But it's not difficult. It's just a matter of balancing everything out so I have the time. The difficult thing for me, because I have a significant hearing impairment, is understanding what the speakers are saying when they're talking in voice. And although the transcribers do a great job putting as much as they can in, it's still difficult to keep track of. And in all of the organizations I work with, I'm trying to get them to use the speakeasies, like what Callie is using today, like what the most of the presenters at VWBPE are using, to put at least part of what they're saying into chat. I think that helps with that kind of challenge. But aside from that, I love this group. It's wonderful to be with. 2 weeks. I wish.
You're only 2 or 3 weeks behind, and some of that you're waiting for me to look at some of the transcripts, so I'm as behind
You're
as
forgetting
you.
the ones from last fall. Oh, I shouldn't have said anything.
All right, wait a minute. Anybody want the job of transcriptor? Only kidding.
Well, I haven't received any questions in IM or anything, but I think, is there anybody else out there who would like to maybe throw out a chat of empathy if you're someone who is involved in trying to maintain a record of your virtual worlds group in terms of chat transcripts or journal entries or a blog, and maybe follow up with how worthwhile that is in terms of engaging non-virtual avatar members. And I'll just close up for a minute. Well, if it's any consolation, I'm in charge of a wiki for my group, and I cannot keep on top of that at all. Again, let's take a moment to give a round of applause for Beth, who has to leave early. She filled in last minute, so thank you for coming, Beth. And I'm sure I'll see you around many places.
Thank you, Beth. An absolute dream to work with.
I have a clarification myself from an IM that came in that, related to maintaining a group and keeping a record. Is the Virtual Education Journal associated with the VWER, or is that associated with the different groups? I thought that was a separate entity.
Yeah, we don't have any journal. So the virtual
Okay.
worlds, yeah, no, that's nothing to do with us.
Just okay. Again, I think though that the virtual education journal is a worthwhile place to put in
Oh yeah,
experiences you've had in virtual world. So it was mentioned in the local chat earlier, but it's not a part of what
oh
your
yeah.
group does.
No, Stephen, I'd like to pick up there. Yeah, I think it is very worthwhile. It's a peer-reviewed journal, and Shailey has published in there, and there's excellent educators publishing, and so yeah, I think so, definitely.
And I have a comment again from Merlin Dust in an IM, just mentioning that he has been using Reddit as a way to again advertise activities about high fidelity, and that even though people don't have avatars, that has become a useful forum for letting other people know without necessarily dipping their own feet in. All right, let's move on to the last question. Unless someone wants to pipe in last minute on challenges, a little sympathy party on running virtual groups. Callie. Well, no, the question was specifically for the Virtual Education Journal, VEJ. But who runs the Virtual World Research Journal?
Okay, I don't know. Hold on, then I might be getting mixed up. So
because there is a Journal of Virtual Worlds Research, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's the one I mean, and that's the one that I'm saying is peer reviewed and whatever. The Virtual Education Journal, I'm not quite as sure. So maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I've read through it many times. It's not really, I think, an education research journal, but it does have lots of very good journal entries and experiences and commentary in it. All right, let's move on to the last question. In what ways let me repeat the question because I didn't see green bars. They've returned in my view. Is everybody hearing me?
Yeah, I've got you now. I
Okay.
lost you there for a minute.
All right, I'll just repeat the question. Sorry if it's a repeat for you. In what ways do you feel the connected network of educators has grown due to the work of the Roundtable?
Do you want me to kick off, Shailey?
Sure, Kali. Yes, please.
Okay. Well, again, I can only speak for myself. You know, for me, it's really helped me to increase my understanding of several learning, teaching, and assessment strategies that cross really across disciplines and the global systems of education. As I said earlier, I had no idea what the American system was all about. Before I really started this, and I was getting mixed up with my minors and my majors and my K-12s and my whatever. So that was a little confusing for me. So that's really helped me to understand that. I've probably grown in confidence and learned a lot from everybody that's been coming along, and lots of transferable skills that have transferred out into the kind of physical world. So for me, about facilitating group discussions, even especially when you have a variety of educators, I think actually harder in the physical world because often people know who each other is, and there can become a little bit of academic snobbery into it, or a little bit of hierarchy, where I think that in here it's a much more egalitarian kind of system where people often don't know that you have the professor of blah blah blah, or you have someone who's published 40 times here, there, or whatever. People just build those relationships on the discourse that happens within the meetings, and that's maybe as important to the people that are very well established and very successful as well as for people who maybe are more novices. I think, you know, maybe that egalitarian kind of community is nice for both. But again, though, after, I know Beth's obviously gone, but after Shailey said that, I'd really like to hear from the folk here from VWER and see, you know, what do they think about that?
Hello, Stephen. I think the name itself, being the round table, I think that says a lot. That there are no hierarchies. So when we discuss, we've kept the round table format right since the group was set up in 2008, and we have I think the same table as well that we've been using. So everyone's input is valued and everyone is free to say what they want to say. And I think that itself brings in a lot of freedom and a lot of flexibility in the conversations that we have. And the other thing is that it's a place where educators and practitioners both come. So I think, and we have a number of developers also who come into our setting. So I think it's the multiple perspectives that we get to a particular problem, or the multiple views that we get to a particular problem, that is very useful. And it's also the variety of disciplines that we get. So someday we would be talking about teacher training. The other day we would be talking about language learning. Another week we would be talking about STEM education or healthcare education. And I think even when these variety of topics may not directly be of interest to us, but the tips and the ideas that you get as to how 3D virtual worlds are being used to enhance student learning and engagement, the kind of interactive activities that are being used can always be mapped to the discipline in which we are working. So I think it is the examples that we get and the interdisciplinary outlook that we've developed by attending these sessions has been very useful for our growth as educators in this of virtual world environments. And it's a place where you can brainstorm ideas, and we not only have different disciplines, we don't only have educators, practitioners grouping, but also people from different countries and backgrounds who come. And that itself also gives us perspectives about the challenges people face in different countries. And as I said earlier, knowing that it's going to happen every week, and there would be bound to be somebody there to share with you the resources, is a very important factor. I think the discipline and the regularity of the session is the most important part for me. And I checked it in our last forum, and many colleagues felt that that discipline that we've maintained has been the most. We've never moved it, irrespective of whatever may have happened. We've never moved the day and the time. And it's an important space for, it's a very valuable space for informal learning. And finally, I think for me, coming in every week, it just affirms my convictions about the role of 3D virtual worlds in education. So even when outside it sounds very gloomy, coming here reaffirms with me, and I go with an enhanced confidence in the real world.
And I think while we're on that, I'm just going to echo what Callie Pizzaro, she was mentioning in the text that that one can learn a lot of skills from one sort of technique or device of pedagogy, but then as you really examine that spills over to the other areas that you do, even in the regular classroom. And that's something I've noticed as well myself, is that I think Second Life is great for having communication channels open, so I try and find additional ways to do that in a regular classroom as well. So any other questions from local chat?
Stephen, just to add there as well, it's probably gave me a really much better global perspective on education as well. And I think that is a really important point at the moment. And, it's probably increased my international kind of profile, if you like, as well. I now get contact with folk all around the world, which I absolutely love, and my students love when they come in. They're not that as excited when poor Shailey comes just from England until they actually hear her speak, of course. But it's great for them to hear folk from all around the world popping in to discuss something or whatever. I think that's a really nice part as well. We all were talking about this, making our students global citizens. I think that we probably could do more to actually encourage that. So
I'm going to follow up on a question from Professor Dan Netizin, where he's making the case that education has been scattered because of Linden Lab's abandonment of support. One, do you actually think that that is true? Is that really a primary cause, you think? But to carry on to that, or to follow on to that, are groups like virtual VWER something that maybe can completely take the place of the commercial entity backing the virtual worlds, being able to make it a growth area for educators?
Shailey, why don't you kick off?
Sorry, Kali, I couldn't really get the question. Could you kindly repeat it for me, and then I'll be happy to take it on.
Yeah, and I'll just shorten it. Do you think Second Life or Linden Labs' lack of support for educators directly has led to the scattering of educators in different virtual worlds? And do you think VWR or groups like that are sufficient to make up that lack of support, to make it a great platform for educators?
Thank you, Stephen, for clarifying the question. I think that it is not just the support that we stopped getting from Linden Labs towards educational initiatives and Second Life, and also because of the discounts that we used to get. I think Second Life is extremely good for community building and for meeting people globally. But as our institutions who have to fund our initiatives or support our initiatives, and our senior colleagues who are at the policy level, they are very skeptical about Second Life. And I think it is because it does not belong to us. When you have a learning management system or a virtual learning environment, you set it up on your servers and you have almost a complete control on the access of it, and you have a complete control about its availability. And that you cannot have with Second Life. So I think it is not only the lack of support, but it's the perception that our colleagues have about Second Life and about it not being in control. And I think that was one of the reasons why we have not chosen Second Life. And when we got the funding, we chose Unity 3D. The OpenSim, again, I think it being an open source environment, being in the state of constantly improving and developing, that has been another constraint that we did not move, and many other institutions who moved, we've not seen any major developments in that area. The other thing is that institutions like applications which can be enabled from the web, so that they are web browser based, where students, because web can be accessed from anywhere, they don't like the client server applications. And that is the reason why Unity 3D is becoming popular. You develop a Unity 3D app and you can access it via the web browser. You don't need a client server configuration like Second Life or OpenSim required. So I think it is not only the lack of support, but the characteristics of it, of Second Life, that make it not very appealing to the people who fund our initiatives or who support our initiatives. But having said that, I think Second Life still continues to be an environment where you can meet people from different disciplines. If you develop a Unity 3D application which sits on your servers, even if you provide access to external people who can come within it, you cannot have the kind of international community that Second Life can have. And therefore, I feel that Second Life will always sit alongside the other initiatives that we have. So even if we go as educators and diversify into other environments, whether it's Unity 3D or OpenSim or any other environment, we would still be coming to Second Life for community building. And I think that is the reason why the Virtual Worlds Education Roundtable has been a kind of a bonding mechanism for us. And I think it will continue to play a role even if we go on to other venues.
Yeah. Can I just add to that as well? Sorry. The other thing that's important for me is, although, you know, there still is kind of a bit of pushback from some people within the university, we also have students who do cyber psychology. So for them, the actual ability to go out and just speak to and find people, you know, normal, everyday people who are living their life in the virtual world or part of it in Second Life, is important, because that's who they want to talk to, that's who they want to, you know, find out how they identify themselves, how they present themselves and so on. That's what's important to them. And they'll, you know, so they could get that in OpenSim, obviously, but again, they would need to find the right places to go. But we already have an island in here, so, you know, we're keeping it going, so we might as well use it. Also, for me and for my PhD, it's about the people again. It's not about, you know, it's not actually about education. It's about people who have health conditions, who are in the virtual world, either searching for information, support, or, you know, helping, being in these communities and how it helps them to live with or cope with their long-term conditions. So I need the people that are in the world, you know, and as much as I would love to be in 6, 7, 10 different virtual worlds, I just physically don't have the time to do it. So the other thing about being spread across different worlds, I think, you know, Second Life was here, everybody moved in, did their thing, sometimes didn't do the right thing, which was fine, because, you know, part of the failure is part of the learning. So sometimes then it would be better to just be in the behind the firewall platform. That's what worked best for them, so fine. But for others, it's a virtual Second Life that they need. But yes, for us, it's just easier for me personally to have one place that I come to all the time. I'm already in here, I already work here, I already research in here. So to move around into different virtual worlds all the time, it just wouldn't be practical for me more than anything else. So that's almost why you're always here. But most folk still have Second Life as well. Not everybody is in every other OpenSim, so that's kind of me.
Well, Agile Bill has finally put in a second comment where I feel like I can connect something he said earlier. And what he said recently is he's been using different virtual worlds, but he comes back to Second Life for the community. And he had said earlier, what about using 3D interactive objects but no avatar? So again, maybe more having students or new users have a first-person shooter perspective as compared to the outside camera perspective. And I think it comes to the idea that there are lots of different tools that one can use for different purposes in virtual worlds and education, but the Second Life is always this community. So I ask a challenging question for the VWER, which is there, under what conditions could you imagine that you will leave Second Life as your primary site for meeting as a community? What would it take to move on?
I don't do it anymore and no one else comes up to the plate. That might stop it. So, because that's the other thing, it almost, I probably can share this now, but the VWER was almost no more last year when AJ said, or the year before when he said, you know, I can't do this anymore, I have other things going on. So we were almost shut down. So what would make me leave Second Life? What would make me leave Second Life is another and better platform where everybody else moves as well. So if you all move, I'm going to have to move. Because at the end of the day, having a meeting of one does not make a community. And it's not really much fun. So that's one main thing that would make me move. Or even a few.
All right, good questions, Agile Bill. Anybody else from the audience? Again, those were the 5 major questions that were asked ahead of time to the panel. I have one more question that I can ask on my own that I had kind of prepared. I gave a talk recently at my local university, and I constructed this slide. If you look at the presentation board, I have an image here of students playing Minecraft, and I was making the case that the 8 and 12-year-olds of today that have their own Minecraft servers and play on handheld devices, give them 10 years, they're going to be coming to college. Is there anything that you would want to say now to people about this cohort of students who would be coming through at that time, the ones who are much more familiar and just love building with big blocks?
I'm just going to tell you a very short bit and then Shailey, please jump in. I've kind of tried to make that argument as well. Some folk totally go for it and say, oh yeah, I can see that with my child and everything else. And other folk tell me, yeah, but once they get to 18, they won't be interested in this stuff anymore. So you really can't win sometimes.
Shailey?
Stephen, could you kindly repeat it for me? Sorry, I have missed the main point. What were you saying, please?
Well, do you think that these kids who are in the maybe 8 to 12-year-old cohort right now that are very familiar with handheld devices, are starting with computers at an early age compared to most of us, that when they're college students, that there's something the VWR would recommend to the people who be educating them in those 10 to 12 years from now, in terms of what you can do as a faculty, or to be prepared for them, or to try and engage them?
I think that, Stephen, they are already very well versed with these technologies. When we developed this 3D Unity field trip, in fact, we had some children evaluating it for us, and it was very natural for them to navigate within those environments, and they did not refer to any manual. They didn't need any guidance from us, and they were just moving around within these environments. So navigation wasn't a problem, interactivity wasn't a problem for them. Now, but they were not really focusing on the pedagogy, because at that age, they were not really focusing on the geology part of the field trip that we were developing. So I think that, yes, they would find it easy to navigate in these environments, but their expectations are also very high because they are exposed to a variety of environments. So sometimes these environments don't seem for them that sophisticated as they would like it to be. So I think we would have to move to a greater sophistication and to show to them that how these environments add to their learning experience. Because if we need to convince them, and it is that goes true for every student that we teach, that we have to convince them that how it adds to their skills, how it adds to the learning outcomes that you've set up for a particular course or a module, only then they would adopt a particular technology. So I don't think that there is something very exclusive about these students. They may be very good in navigation and interactivity, but the basic principles, the basic pedagogical principles are being built now. They have to be built in future, and interfaces anyway are becoming more sophisticated, and they will continue to become more sophisticated, except that these students will not require much of training in using these interfaces. So it's very hard for me to predict as to how things would be different for them, because more and more of our educational environments have the principles of gaming and gamification built within them, which these children are already used to. So I don't anticipate any specific guidance, or I can't give any specific guidance to educators, because technologies will move, and so will these skills and aspirations and expectations of these students will also move. So I don't see any specific guidance as such, Stephen. I hope I've been able to answer something towards your question.
No, I think I got some insight from that one myself. Any other audience questions? We are we're 20 minutes ahead of time in terms of finishing, but if that's the discussion, that's the discussion. I mean, I think there's been some discussion about OpenSim and local chat, but I think that might be something more appropriate for another panel.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that, can I just say though that, I love Second Life and etc., but I don't really have any loyalty to Linden Lab. They're a company just like Facebook and whoever are a company personally to me. So, I have nothing against OpenSim at all. I just, maintaining a presence in one place at the moment is enough for me, and I do need to work and live here for other reasons, so that's partly why I'm here. I find it easy to use now, and I'm comfortable, and I've got a great bunch of friends and colleagues that are here, so that's why I stay. So
I think Agile Bill wants to make one last question to the panel, and then I think we'll close this up. And he asks, is gamification or 3D virtual worlds the key? And I think that means in terms of introducing this as a pedagogy to K through 12 or university institutions. Do you want to make any general comments about gamification? Or which one would you pick? Okay, take the question however you want.
Shailey, you want to go with that?
Yes, I'm fine. I think it's the elements of game-based learning or gamification which can be built in 3D environments, or they could be built in 2D environments. So I don't think that it is the gamification or game-based learning is only restricted to 3D environments. But I think 3D environments give you more flexibility for building those things because of the very fact that these environments are 3D, and you can build in the interactivity and the game-based learning. And I think the game-based learning associated with badges, where people get some badges for having achieved some steps, or where the interface opens to more possibilities after you've completed some steps in the activities. I think those add some mystery and surprise to students' learning and engagement. And the sense of achievement on getting the badges, and the sense of getting more badges as they achieve more is something which is becoming very, very significant. And I think we've already seen right from 2008 many activities here having this game-based element to them, where you complete something and then the environment opens up to more possibilities. Then you complete something and you get more insights as you move along. And if you don't complete an activity, you can't go to the next stage of activity. And I think that all adds to the engagement of the activity. So I feel that 3D virtual environments do provide, they provide more scope for integrating game-based learning and gamification elements as compared to the 2D environments. And if it is linked up with badges, as I just described, I think that adds a sense of achievement to it. So I think there is a lot of scope for it, and this field will continue to grow. And EduCause has recently released a paper, which is a very short paper of 2 pages, where they talk about the growth of games and game-based learning in education, which might be a useful thing to look at if colleagues are interested.
Wonderful. Well, I think on that note, I would like to thank our panel members for having come and talked about the Virtual Worlds Education Roundtable. And thank you all in the audience for having come. And provided some great questions and commentary.
Thanks to you, Stephen, for organizing this and for moderating our session, and for all the background coordination that you did with all of us. So thank you, Stephen.
You're welcome, and on behalf of the other organizers of the conference who've done more than I have, you're welcome.
And just a last thing, Stephen, obviously we need to thank AJ Kelton, AJ Brooks, Olivia Hotshot, and Steckel, and Joe Essed, Iggy, our great chap Iggy, who I'm about to meet in the physical world this summer, because, you know, obviously AJ started it and they were really vital in the first kind of starting of the Second Life Education Roundtable, which is now metamorphosized into the Virtual Worlds Education Roundtable. And on the last ever note, I have to thank every single person that has ever been at a meeting, contributed to a meeting, just sat there and listened without saying a word, and for all the folk that moderate and everything for us. But thanks again, Stephen, for inviting us. We were really delighted that you gave us this opportunity to reflect ourselves on where we're at and maybe what we should do in the future. So thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you, Kali, for holding the group together for all this time. So thanks to you, Kali.
Thanks, Shailey.